He's back. Guess which job Chris Kobach wants now? Will you give it to him? And what would you do to keep these power poles out of your neighborhood? You've got a new tool to use against them. Plus, a new lending program that some say will make Kansas the new Cayman Islands when it comes to loans to the uber rich. That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. This is Kansas Week, and I'm your host, Pilar Pedraza. Hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion, could start flowing into 77 of the most rural counties in Kansas. It's all part of a new lending law that some say will bring money from around the world pouring into Main Street businesses. KAKE's Eli Higgins explains how it works.
Here's how it works. It gives people the ability to take out a loan against assets like trust funds or other investments where, until now, you couldn't legally borrow from in any state. A fee is paid on the transaction, and that money goes directly into rural communities.
The sky is the limit when you're talking about anywhere from $10 to $100 million or up to $1 billion over the next 10 years flowing directly into rural Kansas. And folks, this is not Kansans money. This is money coming from California, Florida, Hong Kong, Russia, anywhere, because Kansas took the lead and developed the framework for growth for the fiduciary finance industry.
The new law takes effect July 1st. After that, Heston will start seeing the money right away as the pilot town.
I'm just hoping that this brings our community together, makes us even stronger. I'm hoping to beautify our downtown, to bring new, maybe a new restaurant, maybe a grocery store, other types of stores, and just attract people to our community and let them know what we have here.
In Heston, Eli Higgins, KAKE News on your side.
And here to help us wrap our minds around this and other topics today, we have State Representative Gail Finney, a Wichita Democrat, joining us for the first time on set. And joining us by Zoom, we have State Representative Christy Williams, a Republican from Augusta. Thank you both so much for being here. And Christy, since I've got you up, I'll go ahead and start with you. We've seen a lot of different programs designed to bring money into the state. It seems to be a lot of positiveness that this one will actually work. You've been there as the debate went on over this bill. What do you think?
Hey, I think this is good news for Kansas. There's not many opportunities for Kansas to lead. This is a kind of a new evolving industry in which Kansas would be the first and only state to open up a set of laws that would allow for these alternative investment trusts to be formed. And I'm very excited. I love the story behind it. And I'm very glad that there was bipartisan support for it.
And calling it bipartisan, Gail, what did you think of this bill as it came through?
Well, I'm actually on the Financial Institutions Committee, and I got a chance to meet the gentleman that's spearheading it. I was just a little concerned about it. I'm glad to see that 2.5% that will go to the counties, but I would love to see it expanded throughout the state of Kansas and not just related just specifically for the rural areas. And also that 2.5%. I was just kind of curious too as to where the majority of the funding will go, because the company that's spearheading it is an independent corporation and is not really directly with Kansas. So I was just a little concerned about it, but it does seem like it is a great opportunity, and I look forward to seeing after the pilot how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, and this pilot, 1 year long, and Christy, we've seen a lot of pilots. I know rural opportunity zones, there's a lot of hope there, and certainly rural parts of Kansas need some help. Do we see this one following the same lines of rural opportunity zones, maybe having some limited success, or is it something that really sets up for a major influx of dollars to these towns that, can't even keep a grocery store right now?
Right. And as you know, Pilar, that it all started with one of the owners of this institution, this plan, this package. His mother, who is 80 years old in Heston, said, you know what? I really wish we had a grocery store. So imagine this. There are only upsides to this. There are no risks for Kansas, but I want you to imagine that we have an over $8 trillion global industry of alternative assets. If we were just to have a fraction of that in Kansas at the 2.5%, imagine what it could do to our 77 rural counties in these opportunity zones. But I do agree with Representative Finney. It's not going to impact Sedgwick County directly or Butler County, my county. And I know that all of us could benefit potentially from where this might go.
Yeah, picking up from that, we were talking about the grocery store issue involved with this, and certainly we've got several grocery store deserts in the Wichita area.
Yeah, we have several deserts here, and like I said, we could use that financial opportunity. Well, I would love to be expanded. And also, one thing about this particular pilot is exclusive for this one company, and I'm hoping that after this exclusivity has ended, it gives other companies opportunity to come into Kansas too. And I think that I will feel a little more comfortable when we have a little more competition there as well.
When it comes to finances, competition tends to help out a little bit.
It sure does.
All right, well, we're going to move on to our next topic here, an eyesore that drains home values. That's how some Wichitans have described giant power poles that went up in their neighborhood a few years ago. The governor signing a bill this week designed to help Kansans know what to expect before the poles go in. These 105-foot tall steel poles support high-voltage power lines that connect 3 substations in northeast Wichita. They were part of an equipment update when they went in back in 2018. Homeowners in the neighborhood say their home values plummeted almost immediately and accused Evergy, then Westar, of using bait-and-switch tactics to get homeowner approval of the plans. Residents say they expected new wooden poles like the old ones, not these steel monstrosities. Since then, they've fought to have more of a say in upgrades like this, and Thursday, the governor held a bill signing ceremony in their neighborhood to promote a law requiring more transparency from utility companies before projects like this in urban areas. Evergy has since apologized, made donations to the community, and even bought some of the properties.
We don't always get that process right. And as City Councilman Johnson noted, sometimes we get it wrong.
Under this new law, companies like Evergy would have to notify property owners, residents, and the city at least 6 months before beginning to string the new lines. They would also have to hold an open house for public comment with a member of the Kansas Corporation Commission present.
I also want to thank the Evergy team for continuing to sit at the table. It was tough. With Representative Finney and I, we were not happy about what was going on, and sometimes that pushback was very stern. But the team at Evergy continued to stay at the table.
This bill, like I said, the reason we have them here today is because it's an effort that we came together and negotiated. It's something that can work out for everybody.
One thing the law doesn't do is give residents or the city veto power over projects like this, however. And Gail, this was one of your passion projects over the last few years, really pushed hard for it. What to you is the biggest win in this bill, and what are things that maybe didn't happen that you would like to still see happen?
Well, I'm glad our communication finally opened up, because it was very contentious at first, because that's where I was born, raised, and lived most of my adult life. And I thought that initially, Evergy, formerly Westar, they weren't as cooperative, it's a good word to put, they weren't as cooperative in the beginning as they were now. And I'm glad that they have new leadership. Mr. Campbell, he seems to be a genuine guy, and I believe him. And he's very accepting and forthcoming with the truth and being apologetic about it. But there's still more to be done. Like I said, I believe that this is just a beginning step, because I think utility companies, they still need to be held accountable for what they have done. And so far, Evergy, they have done what they said they were going to do. They have taken down some of the poles, and they have also, like I said, they contributed $1 million to the community. But those poles are still there, the majority of them, and it is still a devaluation for people's property, whether it reflects on the Sedgwick County treasurers on our property taxes or not, because it's very difficult to sell properties in that area, my house included. So there's still much more work to be done, and I'm just glad at least we have come to some type of resolution, because it's taken a long time. I've been working on this since 2018, and I'm also glad that it was bipartisan acceptance too of getting this bill passed as well.
Yeah, speaking about it being bipartisan, Christy, this is one of 2 bipartisan bills that we're talking about here today. Lots of talk, and we're going to talk about it again in a little bit, about all the vetoes and some of the contention that's going on. But that kind of overshadows a lot of the bipartisan work that's been happening in the legislature.
Yes, Pilar, I agree. And I want to take a moment to commend Representative Finney. She has been the one that has been spearheading this. I've watched her on the House floor champion this with passion. So nobody has a bigger heart than Representative Finney. So I applaud her for that. She's tenacious. And in terms of the purpose of this, so that citizens have an opportunity to voice their concerns, that's very important. Accountability and transparency are really more than buzzwords. And I feel like in the legislature in the past 3 to 4 years, we've really hit those areas hard so citizens can be more proactive when something like this happens. Because honestly, when you've got someone that's doing technical work, putting out polls, they're not maybe thinking about the most obstructive or best location, but it matters. Those details matter to homeowners.
And in the celebration on Thursday, City Councilman Brandon Johnson talked about how he hopes to see similar ordinance passed in Wichita. Do you see other towns kind of following suit?
Oh, I see Topeka right away, immediately following suit. They're already working on it. And I've had other counties and city officials contact me about that. They were looking at ways, what can they do also? Because yes, we're going to be the envy. Because right now that bill is for 300,000 population or more, and so right now Wichita, Sedgwick County is the only one that fits that profile. So I'm sure I would be surprised if there wasn't legislation next year that's trying to lower that 300,000 population capacity.
Yeah. Christy, what do you think about that? Right now, this would not impact your communities, and they may want it at some point.
Well, absolutely. And it's not just large corporations like Evergy that impact homeowners making these decisions, but it's also those local municipalities. And again, it's just about thoughtfully considering the homeowner and the impact on their home investment. So I think, I'm very grateful for the representatives' just perseverance on this issue because it does have other implications.
Yeah, talking about not just Evergy, not just utility companies. I know here in Wichita, we've had several battles over cell phone tower placements.
Same thing. It's really the same thing. And when you talk about those towers, I'm sorry, what do you call those? Then when you go down the highway and you see those big old solar, I mean, the same issue. Is we just have to have much more transparency, and we just got to stick at it. I mean, stick together, and I hate to use the word fight, but you have to be tenacious.
Good word, tenacious.
Tenacious.
All right. Well, despite the bipartisanship of the last 2 bills that we've talked about, there have been several issues that have been very contentious. The governor this week issued several more vetoes, all related to provisions in the budget lawmakers passed this year. Governor Laura Kelly said Monday she supports the majority of the budget lawmakers sent her, but felt some parts were unnecessary or should have been vetted better. The Associated Press reports she vetoed 17 measures in the budget. One would have banned the use of state dollars to enforce mask mandates. The Kansas City Star reports another would have given legislative committees more power over how to allocate federal relief funds. These vetoes come after 8 vetoes of non-budget bills the previous week, setting up a busy and contentious veto session set to begin next Monday. And Christy, you're in the leadership on some of these things. How many of these vetoes do you see getting a second look and attempted an override when the veto session begins on Monday?
Budget and those items, whether you're talking about the meditation room or the veto, the line item veto of performance-based budgeting. I think there are some very passionate Republicans that would like to take a look at these. I'm not 100% sure how we're going to package the 18 plus line item vetoes of the budget, but I assure you that there will be many of them that will be working to override.
Yeah. And this is not the only bill that will the budget bill vetoes that might come up for override. There are several others that are on the plate as well. What do you see, Gail, as being the biggest fight as we go into veto session?
Oh gosh.
There will be plenty of them, we know that.
Like some of those vetoes, the E-Verify, I think there's going to be quite a bit of support for that. And the Hope Ranch, the 300,000 that they were looking at donating, I shouldn't say donating, but financing or anyway contributing to that organization, which is a human trafficking organization. I just think it's going to be one of the most interesting veto sessions I've been a part. I've been receiving calls from Republicans and Democrats, everybody's supporting of their particular issues. So, and of course the Gadsden flag, that's one of the vetoes too, and I have a bill that's a part of that. So I'm kind of torn in between that one, so I really can't say which direction I'm going to go right now. So, but it's going to be very interesting.
And speaking of interesting veto sessions, you and I were both there for 2015, which was probably one of the longest ones on record.
Yes. We were there like 3 o'clock in the morning, wasn't it?
At least. Actually, no, I think it was like 4 before we got out because I was doing live shots at 5 a.m.
Yes, I'll never forget that. But we've actually had some more of those too. Not just one. I can recall several of them. So I think it's going to be very interesting. And personally, there's several of them that I'm just unsure about.
Yeah. And Christy, as we're talking about Chaos Ledge After Dark, as we fondly or not so fondly call it, what issues do you think are going to be the ones that kind of drag out, and any ideas how long the veto session might end up being?
Well, I'm hoping that we'll be able to settle things in the allotted time, which would mean that we would wrap it up by at least May 11th. I think taxes will still be on the table. There are some additional costs that Kansas are paying that our neighbors from surrounding states are not paying. So I hope that we can take another hard look at that. But my passion is education. We haven't yet passed a funding bill. And so from my perspective and many of my friends on the right, we must pass full funding along with policy. We should never just be passing $6 billion without adding some accountability and policy with it.
You just skipped to my next question there about the education funding. That's kind of left up in the air at this point, and it wasn't even addressed when Ways and Means and Appropriations met during the break. How difficult is it going to be to find some sort of compromise that will get enough votes to pass?
Well, first of all, I think that there have been a couple of choice pieces which allow money to follow the student. And of those couple of choice pieces that were policy pieces with the funding, some legislators had difficulty with one but not the other. So I think that there will be a lot of support for at least one of those choice pieces. I think the governor likely sees the importance of reaching out to at-risk kids. Our at-risk kids are not doing well right now. And so it's really important to address their needs along with the full funding. And right now, the latest bill did include the governor's full funding for education.
All right. And Gail, what do you see as the most important pieces that need to go into the school funding bill?
My goal is always to make sure that our public schools are fully funded to the extent that they need to be. And of course, I'm sympathetic also to the students at risk. My grandson goes to a special school, a Catholic school, and there's children that need those additional funds. So I'm definitely in support of it. Like I said, that's going to be one of the most interesting parts of this veto session too, is to get that bill solved and to the governor and the governor to sign off on it. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be watching as you guys work on that. And former Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach is hoping you'll give him a new job as Kansas Attorney General. He announced his run for the Republican nomination on Thursday, saying states' attorneys general are the last line of defense against presidential overreach.
Today I'm officially launching my campaign for the office of Kansas Attorney General. Far and away, the number one reason why I am running for the office of Kansas Attorney General is to stand between an overreaching Biden administration with unconstitutional and illegal executive orders and the people of Kansas. Now, the second reason that I'm running for the office of Attorney General is to make clear that in Kansas, the police are enforced, are protected, that laws are enforced, and that law enforcement is respected. The third reason that I'm running for this office is to protect life and to protect Kansas laws that protect our way of life. Whenever a state passes a law to restrict abortion, or whenever a state passes a law that is in some way conservative and protects traditional values, you can bet a lot of money that within a day or two, the ACLU will bring a lawsuit to try to stop that law from going into effect. It has happened in Kansas many times.
And Christy, as the Republican in this panel, I'm going to pick on you first. I'm not going to ask you to tell me whether or not you support Chris Kobach's run, but I know the last time he ran, when he ran for governor, when he ran for not Secretary of State, U.S. Senate, there was a lot of concern that if he won the primary, he would be vulnerable and lose to the Democrat, as we did see in the governor's race. Are you hearing amongst Republicans similar concerns this year or not?
Well, I think number one, you hit the nail on the head that we want someone that will win the general election. And that's the bottom line. So yes, we want somebody that understands the law, will protect Kansans, and actually hedge out some of the intrusion from the federal government. Absolutely. That can only happen if we win the general election.
So do you see Kobach's entry into this race inviting others to jump in, or because of his well-known name, kind of keeping other potential candidates out of the race? What do you think?
Oh, I think it keeps no one that intended to run for Attorney General out. There are many qualified potential candidates, and I'm excited to see what that field looks like.
All right. And that's going to be a very interesting race as we hit that. How important, Gail, do you see the Attorney General post being when it comes to Kansas law?
Well, I think we need someone that is not divisive. We want someone that's focused on the job. We want someone that's not a perennial candidate that has run, I think this is his 8th time. And of course we support what he was saying, that he's going to support the blue. That's okay, and we should support the blue. However, you have to be able to be balanced-minded when it comes to listening to all citizens. The Attorney General not only just works for one organization. He should be representing, or she should be representing everybody. And we need someone that is fair and balanced, and someone that's not going to fly all over the United States, on personal issues or for their personal business. So I'm just hoping that someone on the Republican side and on the Democrat side will be someone that's much more fair, someone that's going to be consistent, and someone that we could all depend on. We shouldn't just have a one-sided Attorney General.
Yeah. And that would be very different, certainly when you can compare and contrast Chris Kobach as Secretary of State and how he handled that job versus Derek Schmidt in the Attorney General's office. Yeah. Schmidt, up until he started to signal he was going to run for governor, did tend to be fairly middle of the road.
Yeah, I think he's much more fair and balanced, and he has a name that people respect. I think if Mr. Kobach does get his name on the ballot, and if he succeeds, I'll be really concerned about the state of Kansas and the image that it will portray for us.
All right. Well, it's going to be a very long race. We're a year and a half away. But entertaining, much like the U.S. Senate race was up until a few months ago.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. One more thing to talk about today. We've all seen prices rising and shortages of everything from toilet paper to wood to build houses. As KSN's Hunter Funk shows us, a lot of that is due to a shortage of drivers after the pandemic.
When it comes to filling up your tank this summer, a shortage in truck drivers may have you going a little further to get that tank of gas.
So you may have to go across the street, or you may only be able to get one type of unlead, not premium.
Grondike Transport is a company that fuels many stations in Kansas. With summer travel coming,
when the volume is up, but the driver count is down, we can't haul all the loads to meet the volume.
It's putting the company in overdrive to find tank truck drivers.
I could use 150 drivers today and put them all to work.
The pandemic creating the perfect storm. McCormick says the shutdown lowered the demand for drivers, which had many retiring early and leaving the industry. It also idled getting a license for those in driving school.
We did have to shut down for quite a while during the pandemic. And then once we reopened, we had to scale back our training program due to the COVID restrictions.
Baza says this reduced the amount of training graduates by 50% in 1 year. She says with 350,000 jobs available nationwide, the need is great.
Companies are increasing pay consistently to recruit that driver to get them to come to work for them.
McCormick is a part of the National Tank Truck Association, who is working on legislation to lower the age of tank drivers from 23 to 21, which could help.
If we can't get enough drivers to haul it, that could severely impact our economy.
And Christy, this is something that involves employment, involves the economy, lots of things there that Kansas is concerned about. But is it something that Kansas can actually get involved in, or is it purely a federal issue at this point, do you think?
Well, first and foremost, we have an issue where we need to get Americans back to work. And there's a rippling effect when Americans aren't back to work. So we're not just seeing it in this industry, but it's affecting restaurants, it's affecting grocery stores. There are not enough workers. And so I think once the federal government starts to, once the unemployment starts to move downward, payments start to move downward, people start to move into employment, it'll be a positive impact for not only this industry, but all industries.
I've got a question that actually, Christy, because my brother was a truck driver until he passed away, and they make pretty good money, much more than they would make on unemployment.
Yeah, that's true. But if you consider the PUA for, let's say, 2 individuals with children, it can be over $100,000 if you take it from the entire expanse that was offered through federal and state. So, I think there's other factors that affect decision making in homes. For example, if you have children and the schools weren't meeting in person, that could impact whether or not you could go to work. So everything has a cost benefit, and now their schools are back open, and that's one other item that's taken off the table that make it difficult for people to return to work. And as people are more confident about their personal health through the vaccine, then they'll be more ready and able to go back to work.
Some good information there. Do you see, Gail, Kansas jumping in and maybe helping with some of the training? Because that is, you can't just become a truck driver, you got to go through training.
I think that Kansas will be responsive to that, because I think just by this issue coming up, a lot of people are thinking of opportunities for employment. And I think it's also an opportunity for contractors, and it's also an opportunity for those schools to be able to expand, because I think our economy is going to bounce back. And I think that people are going to be much more motivated to get into that field, because that field is a well-paid field, and a lot of people are unaware of what's going on, or that field, or the success that they can have there. So I just think this is just a temporary issue, and I think it's going to turn around within the next few months.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it.
All right, thank you.
So Gail, Christy, thank you both so much for joining me. I want to also thank our viewers for watching. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion. We'd love to continue the conversation on social media. Just look for Pilar Pedraza TV or PBS Kansas on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. For now, stay safe and have a great week.